Hey, everybody, welcome into another episode of Good Neighbor Politics. My name is Jason Elam. I'm so glad that you've joined me this week. It's been great to hear from all of you on Instagram, on Substack, on YouTube, wherever you may be commenting. We appreciate that so much. I do read every single comment, and I'll respond to as many as I can. I really appreciate all of you tuning in each week. I enjoy doing these videos, and I hope you enjoy watching them. Today, I want to talk to you about America's scapegoats. You know, since the very beginning of our country, we've always looked for someone else to blame for society. From the very beginning, we were pointing fingers and just saying, well, if those people over there could be dealt with, then society would improve and things would change. Early in the country, a lot of that seemed to be pointed towards Native Americans. As the growing moved westward, they kept running up against Native American tribes who were just living as they had always lived. And in the beginning, they were very peaceful and just wanted to live side by side. But sadly, the Native Americans became an impediment to what the growing colonies and eventually new nation wanted to become. And so they kept pushing Native Americans west. And in order to successfully scapegoat somebody, you have got to be able to, You've got to be able to demonize them. And so that's what they did. They painted the Native Americans as savages, uncivilized, unchristian, heathen savages who needed to be exterminated rather than lived with side by side in neighborly love. And so the fingers were constantly pointing. If those people would get out of our way, we could have more resources, we could have more land, we could have a growing country, growing economy. And so that's what we did. We just kept pointing fingers. Well, the more you villainize somebody, the easier it is to kill them. And so we'd make treaties and never honor them. And we would talk about living side by side in peace. And then we would push them off into a reservation that wasn't nearly big enough for them. They couldn't do the things they'd always been doing. And in humility, often these Native American tribes would accept that lot in life and agree to move to a reservation. But it was never enough. This country just had an unquenchable appetite for conquest and land. And again, I'm so grateful to live in the United States of America. I'm grateful for the freedoms that we have. But I do think it all came at a heavy price, and I don't like the way that it went down. Native Americans were slaughtered. Sometimes we rigged, what we would call today like a false flag event to make it look like the Native Americans were trying to attack us. Check out Heather Cox Richardson's piece on Wounded Knee that came out recently. It's really, really eye-opening. And you'll see how we manipulated some things to make it look like we were the victims and had to defend ourselves when the actual truth is we were the aggressors and the oppressors and the colonizers, and we did some horrific things in the name of conquest and manifest destiny. But it didn't stop with the Native Americans. We kept pointing fingers. We kept thinking that if these other people would just get dealt with, that things would change. And in the early 1900s into of course, the civil rights era, so many folks were pointing fingers at African Americans who were tired of the unjust treatment. Slavery had been illegal for a very long time, but a lot of white people never stopped acting like the African Americans were slaves or second-class citizens. A lot of laws, a lot of policing laws in particular. If you look back at the history of policing in this country, you're going to see a lot of those laws were really about keeping the African American folks in check and keeping them relegated to a second class of American citizenship. It's heartbreaking to see what happened. And when they got sick of it, and when they decided to push back, even something as simple as Rosa Parks refusing to give up her seat on a bus in Montgomery, she was labeled an agitator. If you look back at news reports from Martin Luther King and so many others, John Lewis, others who were absolutely instrumental even little I can't remember her name, Ruby, the young girl who was walking into school that was going to be desegregated. They push back. The media, the government, and a lot of white folks were pushing back on those folks as if they were the problem. They were agitators. I grew up in Ohio, not what most of us think of as a southern place to live, but a lot of our family, we were right there near Cincinnati, so a lot of our family were from Kentucky. And so there was a definite southern culture about that particular part of Ohio. And a lot of people in that area, definitely, when you would ask them about Martin Luther King and you'd ask them about the civil rights era, there were a lot of folks who just felt like, well, Martin Luther King was a troublemaker. He liked to keep things stirred up. He liked to keep things explosive. He was just trying to get a response. He was just trying to... And so they're still scapegoating and pointing fingers. Even while I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, we're still looking back, pointing fingers at other people who are different than us and saying they're the problem. And if they would just handle things differently, then America would be a better place. Well, we're doing it again today, aren't we? The government, as I record this video, is shut down in the United States of America. And Republicans are saying that the reason the government is shut down is because Democrats, who are not in control of anything right now, they don't have the White House, they don't have majorities in either the Senate or the House of Representatives, and they certainly don't control the Supreme Court. All three branches of government are solely controlled by Republicans. But the Republicans are saying, well, the Democrats have shut down our government because they want to give free health care to illegal aliens, to illegals is the term that they use. And it's heartbreaking to hear human beings talked about as if they're illegal, especially on this, as the cliche goes, no one's illegal on stolen land. This is stolen land. We came and we conquested our way into this country, and ever since we got here, we've been pointing fingers at somebody else. Now, it could be somebody who believes politically differently than you. It could be Republicans. It could be Democrats. It could be independents. It could be libertarians. It could be people who don't show up to vote. We're constantly pointing fingers. Right now, the scapegoats in our society are people who have come to this country looking for a better life for themselves and their children. And when they come here, as they've been told to do by all the propaganda, all of the American media, the movies, the newspapers, the books for centuries have been, America's the land of opportunity. Come to the land of the free and the home of the brave. We've got the Statue of Liberty holding the torch of liberty high, saying, come here, all of you who are worn down and tired, and all the huddled masses, come and find your American dream. Well, they've come, and we don't like the way they came. And, it's one thing to say that undocumented immigrants are the problem, which I don't believe. They cannot use most of the resources that we have available to us as American citizens, including any kind of health care. They're not eligible for Medicaid. They're not eligible for Medicare. They're not eligible for Social Security, even though it's cut out of their paychecks every week. They pay into things they will never benefit from. Yet we point the finger at them and say they're the problem. It was a hot button issue in the 2020 election. This out of control mass migration of people moving in illegally, and Trump and his followers were pointing to illegal immigrants as criminals, and so now they've sent out ICE. Trump has deputized a federal police force. Basically, he's got his own secret police now, and they wear masks, and they go into communities, and they drag people out of their beds in the middle of the night, some of whom disappear. They end up in a prison somewhere where they can't access their family or their lawyers, and some of them disappear to a third country that they've never lived in before. And what's horrible about that, while we're doing this to human beings, we justify it, well, they should have come here legally. Here's the sad reality of 2025 in America. It doesn't matter whether they've come here legally or not. because many of the people who are being detained were doing the best they could with a very broken immigration system that said, yes, you can come in, you can ask for asylum, we'll allow you to come in temporarily, and then when the Trump administration took over, canceled visas for thousands of people, maybe millions of people, and said, no, we're out of here. And so a lot of these people who are being arrested by ICE were doing the best they could to operate in the system that we gave them to work with. And then at the last minute, we pulled the rug out from under them. People who are showing up to their immigration hearings. People who a judge has said, you cannot deport this person. ICE grabbing them, shoving them in a van, and sending them off to prison somewhere. It's despicable, especially when we're sending them off to, El Salvador or Uganda or somewhere, God knows where. It's horrific. And scapegoating other people, trying to find solutions to our problems, has never worked. For my fellow Christians, you remember where John the Baptist sees Jesus, his cousin, he knew him, but he points to him and says, behold the Lamb of God who carries away the sins of the world. What he's actually saying there in the Greek is that is the scapegoat of God. If you're going to put all of your animosity and all of your blame for something on someone else, there he is. Behold the scapegoat of God who carries away the sins of the world. And so what Jesus was trying to do in the Gospels is take all of that hate, all of that rage, all of our violence, all of our finger pointing, take it upon himself, die on a cross, and then refuse retribution or violence in return. And that is how Jesus's people are designed to live. We live in a way that doesn't point fingers. And so we need to stop scapegoating one another. And I'm going to say something that some of you are going to have a hard time believing coming out of my mouth, but I really believe that this is accurate. Donald Trump is a symptom, not the problem. MAGA is a symptom, not the problem. Stephen Miller, who I believe is a domestic arsonist, is not, he's a symptom, he's not the problem. The problem is a broken system that gets people so worn out and so angry that they're willing to blow up our culture just to have a new system. The system is irretrievably broken, and we need to stop tinkering around the edges of the system and realize, you know what? Maybe it's not a good idea for everything in America to be about profit. Maybe it's not a good idea for everything in our country to be a money-making opportunity for people in Congress or the billionaires of our culture. Healthcare, for example. How much better would your health be if somebody wasn't trying to profit off of it? If the healthcare CEO wasn't denying claims so that you could get the care that you need in a timely manner without having to jump through a bunch of hoops, how much better would your health be? How much more often would you go to the doctor when you need to if you didn't have to worry about paying that copay or that deductible that makes it impossible to use the health insurance that you pay thousands of dollars every month to? Healthcare in this country is irretrievably broken, and again, it's time we quit tinkering around the edges and do a complete and total wholesale of the system. Now, for a long time, as a Republican and then a Libertarian, I believed that government was the problem. I no longer believe that because I believe that good government is possible. We just have to get the greedy bastards out of politics. We have to get the people who are focused on taking money from lobbyists, taking money from corporations, and then giving the corporations the right to even write the laws themselves. That is ridiculous and should have never been allowed. We're going to have to make major changes in this country for us to be a place where the common good is the goal. But we've got to stop pointing fingers. Donald Trump loves to do things that are inflammatory so that everybody will talk about him and then his folks will defend him. But that keeps fingers pointed at both sides, right? The left are pointing fingers at the right are pointing fingers at the left. Occasionally, they'll both point fingers at other countries or undocumented immigrants or whoever they don't like this week, maybe the media. We point fingers, scapegoating things rather than dealing with the actual problem. The problem is the system. The problem is the racism and white supremacy in our own hearts. We've built this whole system. The criminal justice system in this country was built specifically to keep minorities in check. Look at the history of the criminal justice system. Look at the way we incarcerate black and brown people at so much of a higher rate than we do white people. A black man and a white man could be charged with the same crime and get completely different outcomes. Because it's all about, a judge or a jury feeling like you're one of them, and they'll give you the benefit of the doubt. You can tell a lot about a person by who you're willing to give the benefit of the doubt to. If you look at a white man holding a gun and you see a patriot, but you look at a black man carrying a gun and see a thug or a threat, then you are living life through the lens of the filter of white supremacy, and you need to repent. And I need to repent. And so it's time for major changes in the way that we interact with one another. But I think there's a problem. One of the things that holds us back from doing this is we're not convinced that we're all in this together. There's been one system of justice for the wealthy, one system of government for the wealthy, one system of socialism even for the wealthy that doesn't exist for the everyday working person. And so, pointing fingers at the billionaires, pointing fingers at immigrants, pointing fingers at Republicans or Democrats, that just keeps you pointing fingers. It doesn't fix anything. We need to take a long, hard look at the system itself. The system is broken. Well, as you've probably heard, it's not broken. It was built this way. It's beyond repair. We need a new system. We need a new system of government. We need a new system of economy. We need a new criminal justice system. We need a new healthcare system. We need a new way of living in the United States. We need a new American dream. You see, when I say I want healthcare for all, I want that for you as much as I want it for me. I want a livable wage for you as much as I want it for me. I want justice for you as much as I want it for me. You see, a set of rights for me as a white man, that's not a system of justice for everyone. That's just privilege. That's oppression. That's not freedom. Freedom says everybody has the same rights. Now, here in the state of Florida, we have, as of several years ago, something called the Stand Your Ground law. If you feel threatened in your person or your property, you are authorized to use deadly force if you feel threatened. You can use deadly force to stop that which you perceive to be a threat. Now, I don't have to paint the picture for you. You know this law was built for people who look like me. If I feel threatened, especially by a person of color, then a jury is probably going to let me off if I shoot them down because I felt threatened. But put that shoe on the other foot. What if a black man feels threatened by a white man and shoots them? Let me ask you this. An immigrant to this country, or maybe even just an American citizen who's getting detained by ICE, feels threatened by people who jump out of a van with masks on who won't reveal their identities and tries to shove him into a van. He feels threatened by them. He pulls out a gun and shoots them. Is he going to get off? No, he's not. Because the laws weren't written for him. The laws were written for people like me. And so, again, I'm 100% nonviolent. I don't recommend violence. It's not an outcome that is going to lead to anything positive. Please, please, please don't shoot your neighbors of any color. Don't do it. Don't use violence to reach a political end. It's unacceptable in a civilized culture for us to use violence. We need to evolve beyond the need for violence to settle our differences. My little grandson, Luca, he just turned 1 year old a couple of months ago. He's so precious. He is just a highlight of our lives. We cannot imagine our lives without him at this point. He's so sweet. When he was really little, Brandy, when he would come over, Brandy would be the one rocking him to sleep in that rocking chair, and he just loved it. He has a little noise machine, and he has a fan, and he has certain circumstances that he likes in order to be able to rest comfortably. Well, the last few weeks, for some reason, he just really enjoys laying down with Grandpa, me, and I'm so excited about that. When he gets tired, he'll just come up and he'll reach to me, and I'll say, "Hey, do you want to go lay down?" And we'll turn the fan on, and we lay down, and he just snuggles up right here in my arm, and he'll start to fall asleep. And you know what he does right before he falls asleep? He just lifts up his hand, and he wants to hold my hand. And he may sleep for 2 hours. But every few minutes throughout that 2 hours, he's going to squeeze my hand to make sure I'm still there. Now, I don't know why he switched from Brandy to me for this season of his life. I'm so glad that he did, because I get some of those cuddles too now. I guess he just wanted somebody who looked as tired as he does. Somebody he knew was not going anywhere during nap time. That's me. But I'll just sit there and I'll hold his hand, and I'll wrap my arm around him and hold him tight. And he'll sleep so peacefully because he knows that I'm there with him for the duration. I'm there until he wakes up. I'm there. I'm not going to put him down. At this phase of his life, he doesn't want somebody that's going to get him to sleep and then lay him in his bed. He wants somebody that's going to be there with him through it all. And I think we've lost that. I think we have forgotten that we're in this together. I think that is a powerful picture of what's going on in our culture. Between races, between political parties, we've forgotten that we're neighbors. When Jesus told stories about neighbors and what it meant to be a good neighbor, he picked the villain of the culture. He was talking to a Jewish culture. He picked a Gentile, the Samaritan, and made him the hero of the story. Today, that story might be called the Good Palestinian. We've forgotten that we're in this together. Sometimes I don't think we are in this together. Sometimes I hear things about, the great national divorce or the next civil war, all these things that we think are going to solve the problem. They're not going to solve the problem. You know what's going to solve the problem? Us locking in for the long term, saying, I am here for the duration. We're going to change this thing. We're going to have a livable wage for everyone. We're going to have health care for everybody. We're going to have affordable housing for everyone. We're going to have education, tuition-free education from cradle to grave. We're going to have a justice system that works for people who don't look like me the same way it works for people who do look like me. And we're going to have a government that functions apart from the influence of money and billionaires who are buying their way into political power. We're going to do that. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take me and you to stop pointing fingers at immigrants, Republicans, Democrats, people who don't look like us. It's going to take us locking arms and saying, we are in this together, and we are in this for the common good. We are going to be the good neighbor that Jesus told us about in that story of the Good Samaritan or the Good Palestinian. Now, we got a long way to go. It's going to take major changes. We're going to have to be willing to do some things we've never done before, none of which involves bloodshed. I do think Stephen Miller is going to prison at the end of all this, but that's a totally different scenario. That's a totally different rabbit hunt. We'll go down another time. Let us move forward together, knowing that we have each other's best interests at heart and that government can be a force for good if we keep the corruption out of it. And the corruption is equally on both sides. Look at, please, for the love of God, look at the leaders of both parties and tell me they are not bought and paid for. The reason Congress does absolutely nothing that their sponsors don't want done is because they've been paid to stay in line with what their corporate overlords, what the billionaire class wants for this society. They've bought the Supreme Court, they've bought the Congress, and if you listen to President Trump talk about some of the appointments he's made, he doesn't know why he appointed certain people to judgeships or ambassadorships. Somebody just told him, hey, this is who you need. And he does it because other people are putting their pawns in place to work their will in our country. And again, the answer is not to point our finger at Trump. He's a symptom. It's time to address the problem. The problem is the system. We need a new system for the common good. And I don't know if the people in Congress today are ever going to get there. There are some people who really give me hope. James Tallarico in Texas gives me some hope. Graham Plattner up in Maine gives me some hope. If you listen to those guys talk, they seem to get it. AOC gave me a lot of hope for a very long time. I really disagreed with her on her vote to continue providing the Iron Dome over Israel because I felt like it was just the wrong message to send when they're committing a genocide. But there are times when she gives me great hope. Of course, Bernie Sanders gives me a lot of hope. I understand that his political career is coming to an end, but I think 1,000 others need to rise up and take his place. Zohran Mamdani needs to be a prototype of what we need. And again, it's not about being a Democrat. It's not about being a Republican. It's about being willing to do things that haven't been done. It's about being willing to try things that have never been tried. What we're doing now doesn't work, so let's do something else. It's going to take a long time for the country to wrap its mind around that. It's going to take me and you talking about government being a vessel of good, an instrument of good to accomplish good things in the world. It's going to take us talking about a livable minimum wage. It's going to take us talking about a real criminal justice system reform. It's going to take us talking about health care for everyone, education for everyone. It's going to take us talking about a different kind of political system that doesn't reward us versus them, but rewards us coming together to get things done for the common good. What do you think? What does America need? What does it look like? And how do we get there from here? I'll have some more thoughts on that on our next episode. In between now and then, I'd love to hear from you. What do you think America needs? And how can we get there from here? Please subscribe to this YouTube channel. Follow me on Substack. Follow me on TikTok. Follow me on Instagram. I would love to connect with you in all of those places so that we can help make the movement that America needs to happen, this movement for the common good. We need to get it underway. The sooner the better for your children and your grandchildren and mine. Thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you next week.